Good afternoon and welcome to the sixth installment of Turnkey Talks. My name is Kelly Lewis and I serve as our Director of Diversity and Inclusion at Turnkey ZRG, the premier search firm within the sports and entertainment space. At Turnkey, we are intentional in our dedication to the advancement of people and culture, and it is my job to assist in the magnification and identification of talent stemming from underrepresented groups. Before we jump into our program today, I want to first acknowledge our newest members and organizations who have come aboard as members. Major League Baseball, Austin FC, Miami Dolphins, WWE, Atlanta Hawks, Dallas Cowboys, and the Texas Rangers. Thank you all. Additionally, we want to give a special shout out to Diane Billings-Buford and the RISE team for their work in providing valuable resources for our members. And as always, we want to thank the Dallas Mavericks for the seed funding to get the assembly launched. And for those of you who have not joined yet, we invite you to get involved. So what exactly is the assembly? It's the first and only member-led organization for people who work in professional sports at teams, leagues, and unions. Our purpose is simple. We exist to champion the advancement of diverse and inclusive leadership, which ties directly into our next session. In the conversation of inclusion and diversity, I have often found our focus typically centers on characteristics like race, gender, and income. And while those characteristics come together to influence one outcomes in employment, housing, and other forms of social networks, data suggests that people often associate with people that are similar to them. This means that valuable resources, advice, and information tied to economic mobility by way of social capital is limited to the circles in which we belong. As the saying goes, your network is your net worth. Today, we are speaking with one of corporate America's in sports best kept secrets, a mental performance coach. Tasked with strengthening the mental performance of athletes, coaches, and CEOs, our next speaker will share insights into the world of mental performance. We will also get an opportunity to experience a live session of his skill sets, specifically targeted to experiences of the front office in sports, and walk away with a once-in-a-lifetime experience that only top dollars and social connections can buy. Before I turn it over to Lynn and Justin, we invite your questions. Please use the question and answer tab, as well as a chat feature at the bottom of the screen. To make sure that this feature is working, please go there now. Tell us where you're viewing from and what organizations you represent. Making sure I'm going to the chat to see who's all here. And with that, I'll go ahead and introduce Lynn Perna.
Kelly, thanks. Appreciate it. Hi again, everybody. Really honored to be here today with Justin. Just first a little bit of background. I met Justin about 10 years ago. I think you were with the Red Sox at that point. And Justin has built not only an amazing career in professional sports and in baseball as a mental performance coach with a number of teams, including currently with the Tampa Bay Rays. But he also does things in addition to that. If you've followed him on LinkedIn or any of the other social platforms, he's got an incredible feed of content, of insights. I encourage you to look up Justin and his social feeds and follow him because he helps me every single day. I've been following you for a long time. Welcome to Turnkey Talks.
Thank you so much, Len. Really grateful to be here. Really humbled and grateful to be here.
So I think just let's level set for everybody that's out there listening. Our audience are people who are in professional sports, but they may not necessarily be the athletes that you're used to working with. They're the front office type people. But talk about what your life is like on a day-to-day basis with a professional baseball team. What are the kinds of things you're doing and how did you get into this?
Yeah, I guess I will start with the latter part of that question. So I wanted to be a professional baseball player myself. I wanted to follow my father's footsteps. He was an immigrant to this country from the country of American Samoa, discovered baseball late. And I wanted to follow his footsteps. And I wasn't as good, quite honest, to be quite honest. And so I got my bachelor's degree in broadcast journalism. I wanted to be the next Stuart Scott, the late Stuart Scott. And I wanted to be involved with sports in that industry. Now, wouldn't you know it, I get my degree from BYU. I go to my first internship. I ended up covering the Los Angeles Lakers. I'm from Los Angeles. And I remember my first interview covering some of the players. And I remember after day one, I went home to tell my wife, this is not for me. I wanted to deal with it. So I went back to be a high school teacher. So I was a high school teacher for about 5 years when I discovered this field of sports psychology. I went and got a master's in sports psychology, left teaching to open my own practice, so to speak, started working with a lot of youth athletes. I love working with youth and parents and just the developmental stage. And wouldn't you know it, I ended up working with the U.S. Army and really focusing on combat medics and warriors in transition, known as wounded warriors. And then I had the tremendous opportunity to go be the head of mental conditioning at the IMG Academy, and then joined the Red Sox and the Browns, and now currently with the Tampa Bay Rays. It's been wonderful. And so when people always ask, what exactly does a mental performance coach do? I give the following example. I think for those who are parents or have ever been a coach or even a leader of any kind, I always ask, how many of you as parents have ever told your child to relax, or that they need to focus or be positive or believe in themselves? And a lot of parents or leaders raise their hands, and then comes the $1 million follow-up question. How many of you have taught your kids how to do those things? How many of you have given them evidence-based tactics and strategies to actually learn how to relax? Have you taught them diaphragmatic breathing? Have you taught them the underpinnings of motivation and confidence and the science of stress? And obviously we see deers in headlights. No, we haven't done that. So my job essentially is to help people who I work with become elite decision makers through mental skills training. And it's such a pleasure and an honor, and I love doing it every single day.
Well, listen, you're really good at it. I know that for a fact. I've experienced it firsthand myself. Let's talk a little bit about, you're working with professional athletes and the stress that comes along with having to produce. And so you've got slumps and you've got players that feel like they're not performing up to their potential. Talk a little bit about what life is like, you know, in the bubble of a baseball team and the athletes that you're working with.
To your point, you're right. This is a very this population is a unique population in that you have a lot of elite, competent experts at their field competing against one another on the highest stage with millions of people watching at extremely high stakes. And so the room for the margin for error is razor thin, and you have a good day or a bad day, and then you're back to do it again the next day. And then you're back to do it again the next day. Not to mention everything going around the world, for everything, all of the conditions, the concerns about health, and there's just so much going on. And so to answer your question, what was life inside of the bubble? It was unique. It was new territory. It was uncharted territory. And so we didn't have the liberty, or the luxury rather, to ask people, hey, what was it like for you? What was it like for you? We didn't have a base rate, so to speak. And so we are charting these uncharted territory together, really putting our resilient skills together, really leaning on our whys. And I say we because we were all in it. It was uncharted territory for myself, trying to reconnect to our purpose and connect with our loved ones, and really trying to keep our heads above water at the same time, perform at an extremely high level. It was very difficult, but here's the thing I love, or not necessarily love, but that's interesting. These professional athletes they don't have the corner market on stress, on performing when it matters most. It's moms, it's dads, it's sales executives, it's managers, it's grocery store clerks, it's pilots, it's all of us. And so we're all kind of navigating this together the best we can. And it's been amazing. It's been difficult. It's been such a learning opportunity.
Well, it seems like if you can help professional athletes, you can really help any executive, any office worker, any person that's in a personal relationship. Because if you think about it, your athletes, the difference between going 3 for 3 and 0 for 3 could be half an inch here, half a second there, a millisecond. It's such a fine line between, a great day and a bad day, or a great week and a bad week. So I assume that you're doing a lot of your coaching before things go bad, before the slump hits, like you're getting them ready to deal, I think, with adversity. So talk about maybe some examples of how you're helping your players, your teammates, as the season is going on.
You bring up a very good point, because as we know, in sports and in life, we have ups and downs. And when the times are good, you ride them. You embrace the good moments. Things are wonderful. And you really pause to appreciate and be grateful for those times. However, another thing that we do as well is we try our best to prime the athletes for the bad times, to establish something called implementation intentions. And it's simply asking the athletes, okay, we're going to have no fans. You've never experienced that before. What are you going to do to perform at a high level when you have empty stands? What are you going to do if the umpire doesn't make a good call? What are you going to do when you have a bad game? So that you respond, as you prepare to respond effectively to adversity, you're a lot more likely to respond effectively to adversity, as opposed to just getting emotionally charged and throwing your hands up and delaying your resilient bounce back rather. So we are always talking about, how are you going to respond? How are you going to respond? So that's to prepare ourselves for adversity. But another thing we do is what sometimes goes under the radar. A lot of people think in this field is, okay, what do I need to do to fix deficiencies? These guys are trying to strengthen their strengths. It's like going to the gym. When you go to the gym, you don't go because you're weak necessarily. You go to maintain, to be strong. So a lot of our conversations is less about fixing deficiencies and more about highlighting their strengths, reconnecting to their why, tapping into their values, reestablishing the things that they're doing good, catching themselves winning, meditating, really accentuating the good that they're doing. And so it's like the phrase, you don't have to be sick to get better, and you're never too good to get better either. And that's something that's why I love working with these elite athletes, is because even though they're at the top of their game, they're still looking to turn no stone unturned in order to get better. And that includes the matters of the mind as well.
So 2 little questions. One is, you're at the cutting edge. Okay. You've been, I think, doing something that, perhaps at the beginning of your career, athletes might have been a little reluctant to work with you, embrace you. Is that true at the beginning, and now is it completely accepted? And the second question is, what is the difference between a psychologist, a wellness coach, and a human performance coach?
Great questions. I'm glad you asked that question, because there is a difference. I have had the unbelievable privilege to work with some of the best mental health psychiatrists and psychologists in the industry, from the Boston Red Sox to the Browns, to IMG Academy, even to the military. These are licensed clinical practitioners who are trained to help these athletes and coaches and other professionals with mental health issues, whether it be severe depression, anxiety, eating disorders. These are things that are outside of my expertise and my circle of competence. These are my colleagues. These are people who, if myself or a coach or a dietitian runs into something that is of a clinical nature, we refer to these wonderful men and women who
So you still have to spot it. You have to be able to issue spot it and know when to send it to the next person.
Yes. So both myself and just like a coach, a strength and conditioning coach. And so these professionals, these practitioners are still good at training all of us to be able to notice and say, hey, this is when you should refer them to me. And really, it comes down to building relationships so strong they can bear the weight of truth. And so as not just myself, but the hitting coach, the pitching coach, the chef, I'm not going to connect with everybody. Like, I'm not going to have a deep relationship with everybody, but we're all looking out for each other, including the players and the staff looking out for each other. And so we need to be able to notice and be able to help guide them to a trained professional that help them with mental health issues, to help them out. And I think that is one thing that I have been grateful to be in organizations with amazing practitioners. Now,
You said something interesting there, stand the test of truth. Did I hear that correctly?
relationships so strong they can bear the weight of truth.
Talk to me about that. I've never heard that expression before, but I love it.
Yeah, so I want to say I heard it from the name will pop up into my mind here in a little bit. But what I love about that is working with professionals. You can't just walk in. I'll just use my context. I'm not just going to walk into a clubhouse or to an office or to a team and sprinkle motivational axioms all over the place. I'm not the sage on the stage. I'm not here to say, hey, let me mental skill you today. It's a relationship. It's building relationships of trust. It's understanding who they are, where they come from, and what are their favorite shows, and being vulnerable myself. And this is my family, and why my wife and kids. And hey, we're all navigating through life together and on our own individual journeys. And then as you build these relationships of trust, then only then will people will be more vulnerable. They'll be willing to take feedback. They'll be willing to share things. They'll be open to learning how to get better themselves. And so I think that is the number one, really not even tactic, number one principle is to build relationships so strong they can bear the weight of truth. Because you can have all the letters behind your name. You can have all of the experience in the world, but if you don't connect, it's going to be hard to make a positive difference in people's lives.
In the complicated ecosystem of a dugout and a team, are the players ever looking at you and saying, hey, are you going to go tell the coach this? Are you ever going to go tell the GM this? Like what? Because you're employed by them. You're employed by the team to help the players and really the whole team. But where does all this confidentiality shake out where they've told you something and you got to keep it to yourself? How do you manage all that?
Yes, that is very, I'm glad you're asking really and these topics that are brought up all the time, not only within our field in professional sports, but even within the industry. When you go to the Association for Applied Sports Psychology, these confidentiality is huge. And as you could imagine, the moment a player hints or sniffs or even assumes that information is not being protected, then yeah, you lose the entire clubhouse, and even the person who comes to replace you, they won't be trusted as well. I truly believe that it starts early on. It starts with an understanding from the general manager, from the head coach, from the director of player development, that these relationships are built on trust. Now, I will speak on my industry in particular, where I am tactics, I am tools, I am strategies. A lot of the stuff we talk about is about performance optimization. Most of our conversations, to be honest, happen in public. They happen at the breakfast table. We're talking about confidence, and then other players chime in. We are discussing mindfulness. We have classroom sessions. So it's very educational based. Very educational based. So it is not necessarily clinical psychology. However, there are moments where if a player has hints, like what we're talking about early, of harming themselves, where it's much deeper, where it's something that's not that you want to make sure you're covering your bases. And if I'm talking to a player, you have to be honest. I will look to the player and say, I'm concerned. This is something that I think would benefit you. I think this is something that you should have help with. And I'll walk you to a clinician, the in-house clinician. There are times where I look at the player and I'll ask, do you think this would be beneficial to tell the staff member or the coach? And if they say yes, it's like, oh, okay, why do you think so? When would you do it? I've had moments where the player would say, can you come with me? Oh, outstanding. I've had players say, hey, can you do it? And a number of different things, but I think true honesty and transparency, and also telling the staff members as well in the front office and so forth that they trust you, that they say, hey, if I see Justin talking to a player, then hey, that they're talking mental performance, and I don't need to peer in, hey, what are they talking to you about? What are they talking to you about? It takes a lot of trust all around.
Do you work also with not only the players, but the coaches? The coaches are under a lot of stress. The coaches have a lot riding on these things. Even when you look into the front office, the general managers, the baseball operations people, and then how about with the business operations people? They're trying to sell tickets. They're under pressure to put people in the house. Like, where does your kind of scope start and stop?
Yeah, that's I think one of the best, a really good example is take a strength and conditioning coach. If you go to the team strength and conditioning coach and you ask him, who comes and asks you for fitness advice? Chances are the front office, the chefs, the cooks, the
owner,
the clubhouse member, because he or she is the strength and conditioning coach, the sports dietitian as well. I have seen every sports dietitian I've been around. The front office, they're walking through the hall and they're asking some tips or some advice, some strategies on how to gain weight, lose weight. Same exact thing. When the organization knows that you have an in-house mental performance coach, you're going to get questions. Hey, Justin, what are some tips on building confidence? Even clubhouse managers, Justin, what are some tips on focusing? I have a lot going on. What do I do to focus? And so I don't want to say everybody, but it tends to be those who I have a good relationship with and who feel comfortable to come up and say, hey, and this is what we always say in baseball. What do you got on? Hey, what do you got on quieting my mind? What do you got on focus? And so that's how it starts.
All right, final question, then we're going to go to some scenarios. I have a friend, Steve Ross, who started an organization called Rise. And one of the reasons he started Rise is because at the Miami Dolphins, there was a bullying incident in the locker room between players. And so I guess I want to ask you, there are all sorts of triggering events that could trigger low performance from an athlete or high performance. Do you run into situations where some of those triggers are other people on the team where maybe the chemistry is not there, they don't get along, they don't like each other, there's water under the bridge? Do you get in the middle of that, and do you try to help, get rid of those triggers, get rid of any negative influence, and are you in charge of chemistry on the team?
To answer that last question succinctly, no. I am not in charge of chemistry on the team. That comes from the person in charge. It comes from either a manager or it comes from our general manager, who is the one who really, someone who steers the ship in terms of team culture and chemistry, and really is willing to have those difficult conversations. It means a lot more when it comes from the person leading the charge than the mental skills coach. However, being in a position, some of the best leaders I've had the chance to interact with, they are willing to gather a lot of perspectives. That's what I'll say, perspectives, and say, hey, what are possible ways they have second order thinking, where, okay, if I do this, what could be the ramifications of this? And then they go and they make their decisions on what they're going to do. And so I have had, as you were describing the situation, I'm going back into my memory. There have been moments where I was right there in the middle of it, whether it be at IMG Academy or in the minor leagues of the Red Sox. And then there have been moments where I didn't even know it happened. I had no clue, and I was tuned in later on from moments where I read it in the paper. I was like, oh, I didn't know that happened yesterday, and I was in the building. And so completely, it depends.
Well, I mean, a big part of the stress can come not only from people putting pressure on themselves to perform, but clearly your teammates want you to perform too, and you don't want to let your teammates down. So there's a dynamic there that I could see could either be very positive when things are going good, but could also feel negative when, hey man, if I had made this play, or if I had made the catch, or if I had gotten a hit here, we would have won this game. I let my team down. So I'm sure you're probably having to deal with that.
That is, yes, you're absolutely right. And I really see myself, and I joke around with some people sometimes saying that I want to change my title to not, instead of mental performance coach, to kind of like perspective coach. Because I'm not in the system with them, I'm not necessarily on the field. I have a very unique perspective, an outside perspective. And combined with a strong relationship, I could ask questions that they would probably get offended if anybody else asked them. But because I am where I am and I sit where I sit, and I have no control over the future of their career or anything, I could ask them those hard questions, not because I have the answer, but maybe as you ask the question, they can come to their own answer. And so I pride myself on learning how to help them gain better perspective, to take out to zoom out or to zoom in, and it's a pleasure doing so.
All right, we're going to run a couple of scenarios now. So I'm going to call some of my colleagues from Turnkey back on stage. Kelly, you want to organize us and take it from here?
I can. Thank you so much, Lynn. You can go ahead and turn off your video if you like. In the meantime, we're going to go ahead and introduce Ali Crone, who will be joining us. She is a member of Turnkey ZRG and has been with us quite some time. I'm going to go ahead and have Ali introduce herself as well as introduce the scenario she's presenting to Justin.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ali Crone, and I've been with Turnkey ZRG for just over 3 years now. And I run all of our marketing and communication searches that come through to us. And just in the scenario that I am presenting, I am a hiring manager looking to fill a position and reaching out to candidates. The women that I reach out to are often less interested or don't raise their hand for the role because they do not meet every single one of the requirements listed in the job description. This often leads to less gender diverse pools of candidates and can result in women climbing the ladder more slowly. How do I have a more inclusive process on my end? And then how can I help guide women in seeing their value in stretch positions that they're working on?
I think this is a great one to start off with, because I think what we're going to do together is we will model. This is not something I run into every day, as you know, and I loved what you said in terms of process. Can you tell us what is your current process like? If you could articulate that in finding them.
Sure. So we start internally, right? We can promote people from within, and then we look externally to peers that we know and reach out to people that we are close to in the industry and say, who do you know who might be a good fit for this position? Build a big candidate pool, have some discussions there with candidates to see who's interested, who's qualified. And a lot of times not everybody checks all the boxes, and that's okay. We can supplement in other areas. So that's typically how our search process starts, from building the candidate list. And then we go through a more extensive interview process through our company.
Okay, excellent. And Ali, for you right now, given everything that you said, what is, if you could articulate, and you already did, you might literally repeat yourself, what is the problem that you see? What is the problem that you are trying to solve?
I want more diverse pools of candidates. Diversity obviously is important within an organization, and I think it starts with the candidates that are in that pool. And so making sure that you get to different perspectives through the interview process. And oftentimes, again, if they are not checking every box, they will not raise their hand or will tell me, I don't think I'm a candidate because I'm missing this piece. And I try to convince them why I called them or why I'm reaching out, and think that they would be in the skills that they have, but they are still hesitant to step into that role or even think that they should raise their hand in that scenario.
And why do you think that is? Why are they, what are they saying? What are you noticing?
I think, and this is generalizing and I'm not a clinical professional, but I think women process much more. I know I do as a female. I process much more positions, instructions, and I do think it's how we approach situations. I also think in general, looking back, opportunity has been given less to females, and that maybe it's just a learned history of raising your hand. Again, I'm generalizing here, but I think in some situations, women have said, I didn't think to raise my hand here because I didn't think I would be a candidate because I didn't meet X, Y, and Z.
No, that makes sense. Now, has there been anything that you have done? So take your current process, go back, I don't know how long, that you've done that you know helps, that you've implemented, it's brand new to the process, or that you know helps you tip the odds towards more diversity? Is there anything that you're currently doing that you know definitely helps?
I think making some requirements preferred as rather than, and this is very technical in the details here, making more preferred requirements rather than required requirements. Again, it allows a little more fluidity to someone's background, what that looks like. Is it a master's degree? Maybe they didn't have access to that, or a higher education degree. So I do think that has helped, again, open up the pool to just more candidates in general.
Yeah. And my last question before I offer a suggestion is, do you have someone who you have hired who maybe was hesitant to raise their hand, who now they're in it and they ended up soaring despite their early reservations early in the process?
I have, yes. There have been candidates, there's a few of them that given the opportunity, they thrive. And I think that that's a piece as a hiring manager we have to see is, even if they don't have the technical skills that they can learn, do they have the ability and desire to learn? And that's where I have seen the most success, is somebody that does through the process become open to learning new things. Being coached is a big part of it. But really, and we see it in sports too, being very collaborative and living in that team environment, and having that mentality, that's the people that I've seen most successful.
I love it. My simple suggestion, I know we're running against our 5-minute shot clock, is my simple suggestion is considering relativity. If you're on a train with a ball and you're staring at the ball, and I were to ask you a train going 60 miles an hour, and I'm sitting next to you, I say, Ali, is the ball moving? You're gonna say, no, it's not. But if we have somebody outside with X-ray vision watching the ball, like, yeah, the ball is actually moving 60 miles an hour as they see it moving. All about perspective and relativity. What I love about your situation is, yes, it's nuanced, it's difficult. There are a lot of variables to why, and a lot of unknowns to why. And one of the things that we always would, as humans, we run into is this confirmation bias. What you see is all there is. And so when you're in a system and you have a process, sometimes it's hard to see our blind spots. And so I would invite you to, and you've probably already done this, is reaching out to other organizations to see what do you do to include diversity? What's working, what's not working, and to be able to ask yourself these questions, and even inverting the problem in terms of, if we were to have a terrible hiring process, how could we make this terrible? How can we make this non-inclusive? What would we have to do? And as you answer those inverted questions, you might find some answers that you might be overlooking now. So to kind of tie it up in a bow, getting an outside view. Who can you get as many outside view, even outside your own system? What rules can you bend? What rules that are you abiding by, or beliefs do you have that you might be able to check and say, you know what, I might not have to believe this anymore. What if I do something different? And so we can go on a lot more. I have some more questions, but that's where I would start, Ali. That's where I would start.
Okay, great. Thanks, Justin. Appreciate it.
Ali, thank you so much for bringing up this timely conversation. I know just working with you internally that women progression is of importance for you. And you often are the one challenging women to take a step back to really ask themselves, why do they not see themselves in this role? So I commend you for your efforts. For those that are out there in the audience, I have some facts and figures I want to give out. Ali, you can go ahead and fade out to the back if you like, as I do as such. So the concept of women and the imposter syndrome that they experience. Women are less likely to apply for jobs that they do not feel like they meet at a 100% rate, while you have men who will apply for jobs and they only qualify for 60% of the job specification requirements. So with this in mind, as hiring managers, we have to be very intentional about ensuring that we are inclusive in our process. A woman simply saying no, we might need to take a step back and probe a little bit more about why are you saying no? Because at first glance, it could be of I'm not interested rather than I don't think I can. And we have to challenge the notion that women cannot do things. The same conversation goes for people of color. And so differently able folks, veteran status as well. So continue to think more deeply about that. I am going to stop talking now and call up our next person who will be participating with us. It is Kyle Brown. Hi, Kyle.
Hey, Kelly. Thanks. Hey, everyone. My name is Kyle Brown. I've been with Turnkey 5.5 years now, which is kind of crazy. But my role here is I sit on all of our revenue roles, so sponsorship, ticketing, everything under those umbrellas. And the past really 1.5 to 2 years, I've done a lot of sponsorship searches where the role is it's an individual contributor, right? Their main objective, their KPIs is to put numbers on the board. So Justin, I wanted to present a scenario where you have a salesperson who's coming off a great year, right? Their goal was 1.5 million in sponsorship and in new business. They crushed it, 2 million. So going into the next year, right? The goal gets elevated, more responsibilities, higher expectations, and they don't start off well, right? You run into a couple months, there's a pressure to perform. So I guess I just wanted to kind of hear from you some strategies, methods, tips on how to deal and handle that pressure, the pressure to perform.
Yes, the pressure to perform. This is a common conversation that we have all the time. One of the things to understand when we talk to somebody about pressure, it's really turning it on its head and really understand, okay, pressure is a privilege. Pressure isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's how are you framing stress? How are you framing pressure? There's tons of research studies that show that stress isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's actually performance enhancing. There's something called the Yerkes-Dodson law, which means that stress is effective until it's not. Essentially, there's this bell curve where for some people, stress will liven you up. It'll take you to the next level. The pressure will be good. However, you have to believe that your skill set is up to the challenge. And that's where flow theory comes in, where you're going to be performing at a level when your perceived challenge matches your perceived skill set. And so that's where now, when you start to scuffle, when you start to have a problem, when you aren't doing very, very, very well, it's very easy to begin to panic and to begin to start searching and considering and thinking to yourself, I'm not good at this. And what I would invite this person to do is to cultivate what we call the growth mindset. There's a lot of things this person cannot control. You can't control the results, but you can control yourself. Now, the growth mindset essentially means you can change, you can evolve. And there are five elements to the growth mindset. Number one, you learn from failure. And I would ask this sales professional, what are you learning from here? Because the natural human, the person, what we want to do is we want to turn a blind eye to our failures. We don't want to watch the tape. We don't want to feel what we're feeling, so we try to mask it. So no, we're going to look at it. What are we doing or what are we not doing contributing to it? Number two is embracing obstacles. We can't give in to the easy way, can't give in to doing what's easy. We got to do what's right. And what's right is to keep going, to keep giving your best. Number three is giving your absolute best effort. It's easy to give your best when things are going well. It's easy to give your best when you feel good, when you're getting those wins. Len and I were talking about the ups and downs. Easy. But can you give your best when you don't feel good, when you're not starting hot, when you're in a slump? Now, a lot of people take their foot off the brake because it's embarrassing to give your best and not produce results. It's embarrassing. That's why a lot of people don't give their best, because you don't want to say, oh, I'm giving my best and I still stink at my job. But the growth mindset is keep giving your best. Number four is seek critical feedback. Now more than ever is this person, whoever he or she is, they need to go and get that feedback. What can they do? Again, we talked about with Ali, an outside perspective. What are they doing or what are they not doing to hinder performance? And lastly is to be inspired by the success of others. Many times when you're in a slump, you're going to look to your left or look to your right and see other people succeeding. Some of these people are less experienced than you. Some of these people aren't working as hard as you, but they're the ones experiencing the success. And so that's where you pause. Instead of being threatened, instead of being jealous, You want to learn. What are they doing? And so you want to catch yourself when this fixed mindset narrative is there, when you want to give up, when you're embarrassed and you don't want to try hard, you're doubting yourself. Really cultivate the growth mindset. Identify, okay, when am I learning from failure? Okay, what's the next hard thing I can do? I got to keep giving my best. Who can help me out? And who's successful around me that I can learn from? So that's what I would start there. And then strategy number 2, I would say, of many, is to start catching yourself winning. Now more than ever is the little things. You can see all of your losses easily, all the L's you're taking because they're emotionally charged. What are the small little wins you're getting? Focus on your preparation, focus on sleep, or whatever you need to do to put yourself in a position to be successful. Notice it, count those little wins, because as you stack small wins and trust the process, the results will take care of themselves.
No, that's great stuff. And it is, I think a lot of that would be helpful, because anyone I talk to, you can tell, like I can know before they even go into it, if they're doing well, they're on a hot streak or a cold streak, just their demeanor, the verbiage, the wording, their energy. So I think having stuff like that would really help them.
And what's your advice to them? What do you say to them? You've seen it. You have a lot of experience in this. What do you say?
I would say, I mean, to steal a quote, you trust the process, right? You've had success. You got to that level that you're at for a reason. Why get too off what's gotten you there? You could tweak it here and there, and there's stuff that comes up and different, whether it's emerging technologies or a new trend. Be ready for that, but still have your core kind of strategies and stick with it, and just make edits here and there, as you go down the path.
I love it. I love that, because trust the process, work the process, attack the process. What I like to do is, you can't do any of those things unless you have a process. Hey, what's your process? What are you doing? And as they articulate it, they might be able to see where they could be more efficient or whatnot. I love that. Hey, keep trusting, because to your point, Kyle, it is hard to trust it when the results aren't coming. And it's like that quote with the guy who, I think it's Andy Rise, R-I-I-S-E. He has a quote of the stonecutter. And he says, when he's struggling and not seeing results, he thinks about the stonecutter who's hammering away at the stone, and he has hit it 100 times. And then on the 101st blow, it breaks. But it wasn't that one hammer, that one knock, it was the 100 that came before. And I think to your point, it's all about trusting that process. But like you said, easier said than done, especially when you're not getting the results.
And that is actually funny that when I'm recruiting and interviewing people, that's one of my main questions is, what is your process, right? Because if it is thorough, then yes, the numbers still need to be there. But if there's a really, thought out process that they stick through, then that's a sign of a good salesperson.
And I love that, because when we talk to these elite athletes, it's, what's your process? What's your thought process? What's your process when you wake up? Because as you automate these processes, you're going to be able to know, when you automate a process, you're putting your mind and your body in the best position to be successful. And you're going to have the ups and downs, but just keep working the process, and that the results will take care of themselves. But that's a great question, great scenario, Kyle. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely.
Thanks, Kyle. And so, Justin, I'm going to close us out with a final question here. So as you know, I oversee our people and culture initiatives. And so I'll be playing the role of a culture-centered professional, whether that is HR or D&I centered. And so one thing that is that, culture in itself is important to ensuring that all voices feel inclusive and safe within a setting. But this work cannot just simply fall on the shoulders of culture-centered professionals, right? Like, this work takes everybody. And so in the effort of giving individuals on this who's listening in the tools of protecting oneself, I am seeking feedback on how to empower others to have tough and critical conversations, as well as shifting mindsets, particularly from an inclusive base.
Yeah, I love that. It's great. So how to have difficult conversations. And then number 2, how to shift your mindsets. Before I get into this, I did not have a chance to comment on what you said after Ali's part. I loved it. Thank you. Loved what you did with the stats that you gave. And I loved how you talked about the imposter syndrome. It happens to all of us. And so I appreciate that. I learned something. So thank you. I think when it comes down to having critical conversations, first of all, well, actually, I'll ask you, Kelly, how on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being great, 1 being terrible, how, this is your opinion, only you can answer this.
Okay.
What, how would you rate yourself at having difficult conversations?
Kelly, as a turnkey ZRG individual, is a 10. I'm great at critical conversations. For the sake of this conversation, I am a 6.
Okay. Okay. Great. And so talk. I like the 10. I like the 10. But we can say. But why do you say a 10? Like why? I'll just go back to the why a 10? Why would you rate yourself a 10?
One, I just felt like my history, my personal history. My mother has always empowered me to have very critical conversations. I am the product of Dawn Williams here. And so one thing she told me is never take no from someone who doesn't have the authority to tell you yes. And so within that was this instillment of questioning and seeking answers and seeking truth. And then as in the same vein, I also was an educator. And so part of that is having and empowering younger students to have critical conversations, and you must have them for the advancement of children and their personal and emotional growth. So it kind of came with me like from my environment, but also through nurture.
I love that. Okay, we're done. Your answer. That was great. And the reason I asked, and I loved what you said, you went back to your history. I think you and Kyle and Ali and Len, all of us, we need to lean into who we are. We need to, a lot of people think, I can't do that. Oh, wow, Kelly she's so good at that. You tapped into the essence of who you are. You tapped into your past experiences, and you are bringing to today, or even the person who you're being, no one in the world's like you. This collection of values and passions and skill sets and experience, no one's like you. And I think when it comes down to anything from having a difficult conversation to hitting a baseball, these are skills. You can learn it. And one of the ways to learn it is to practice it, is to put yourself in those situations and to learn from people like yourself who are at a 10, to go and ask questions. Hey, how do you have that? And I loved what you said in terms of the thing about difficult conversations. It's seeking, it's not about being right. It's about being accurate. What is truth in this case? And sometimes people, and in your opinion, Kelly, why are people, in your professional experience, why are people afraid to have difficult conversations?
Oh, that's a loaded question here.
Generally,
Generally, I feel like it comes down to this perception of wanting to be the way we view these conversations are right or wrong. And so when we think about individuals' perceptions about it, I am not necessarily wrong. There might just be a misunderstanding, right? And so when we take away this concept of you're right and I'm wrong, but rather I didn't understand, please inform me, then I feel like we create a space where these conversations are less risky.
I love that. And I even you make me think about, it's not like it's right or wrong. It's instead of saying you're wrong, you can say I disagree. And or you can help me understand. I love what you're saying. Philip Tetlock, a researcher from UPenn, has one of my favorite quotes. He says, our beliefs are hypotheses to be examined, not treasures to be guarded. And I think one of the best difficult conversations that I've engaged in, which are very difficult, but they're moments where I could suspend my judgment and really seek to understand, really seek to be like, okay, what am I missing? How can I be informed better? This person who I'm having this difficult conversation, they have a perspective. I have a perspective. Okay, let's see if we can get accurate and come together. But I love that. And so that's what I would say to answer it more succinctly is learn from those who are really good at having difficult conversations, and then break it down into tiny little bite-sized micro skills. You're going to have to learn how to be an effective listener. You're going to have to learn empathy. You're going to have to learn how to articulate your side of the story. You're going to have to learn how to modulate your emotions, because difficult conversations trigger emotions. You're going to have to learn how to ask questions that don't come off as demeaning or condescending. And so I think each one of those are micro skills that combined together can help you be a much more effective in difficult conversations. My opinion. You might agree or disagree, but that's what I think. And to answer your second question, how do you help people shift mindsets? You can't change what you're not aware of. And so some of my favorite questions are, hey, what's your relationship like with failure? What's your relationship like with success? How do you define success? How do you define failure? What's your why? How do you define hard work? And as you start to understand how people define these key pillars, how do you define respect? How do you define inclusion? What is it? What is it not to you? You'll be able to peer into their perception of these mindsets. And then as you see, oh, it differs, it alters. Here, let me give you my perspective. It looks like, and I believe that's where it begins.
Thank you. And so we're coming to the close of our programming. Is there any question we might not have asked today that you would love us to be able to ask, or we should have? I have you thinking now.
Justin, that question's for you.
Oh, that question was for me.
Yes. Thanks, Lynn.
I'm looking at the chat box. I'm like, okay, who's going to ask a great question? No, you know what? I think one that I have been thinking about a lot lately is building of confidence. What if I don't feel confident going into work? What if I don't feel confident having those difficult conversations? And a proverb has been on my mind a lot lately is a bird can rest peacefully on the branch, not because of its trust in the branch, but because of its trust in its ability to fly. And I think instead of solely focusing on our confidence in our abilities, we can look back and build confidence and know that, hey, no matter how bad things get, no matter how stressed I am, no matter how burnt out I feel, no matter how difficult things are right now, I've overcome every difficult day up to this point. I still have some battle wounds. I still have some scars, but you know what? I can overcome this through the strength of my go-to habits and my go-to people and my, like we said, my values and my experience. I can figure this out, and we can do this together. And I think that's something that I would leave with, or just if anyone's thinking about confidence and they're wondering about that, I think that's something to rest on.
Lynn, I have one question that popped up in my mind. Can I ask it? Justin, this is coming from me. You have this very calming voice and this spirit about you. And I'm curious, do you happen to have a morning routine that centers around confidence and optimism?
I do. That's very interesting you to ask that. So I have a phrase I love called win the morning. Win the morning. There's a lot of things I can't control in the day. But if I can control the first 90 minutes of my day, that's like a rocket taking off. And I always, we have this thing in my home. What's the best part about today to my kids? And they roll their eyes because it's such a dad saying. I said, you know what the best part about today is, kids? And they say, yes, we've never lived this one before. And I'm like, kids, you got to understand, we've never lived today before. And so to answer your question is, yes, I'll wake up and the first thing I do, I'm really groggy in the morning, workout. I just kind of get the heart rate, and I'm not talking about powerlifting, just run a mile, get a few push-ups in, just get the blood flowing. I will read some kind of book to fill my mind. I will do some kind of meditation or some kind of whether it be a prayer or read scriptures or whatnot. And then I'll just sit. I always have my notebook on me, and I'll just write down thoughts that come to my mind, and I'll just visualize the day, and then I'll go. And it's just kind of, no matter where I'm at, what time zone I'm in, I could always execute that morning routine.
Awesome. Thank you. Lynn, any other final words?
Listen, I just want to highlight, first of all, Justin Sua is the best in our industry. Follow him on social media. You will get something every single day. You'll get a tidbit from him that will help your day. So Justin, I've known you for a long time, but just can't say thank you enough. I want to just go back through the growth mindset, because of all the things that I took away today, I think the growth mindset is absolutely critical for me. And I think it might be for everybody out there. Learn from failure, embrace obstacles, Give your best effort every day. Seek critical feedback. It's a gift. Seek it. Be inspired by the success of others. Don't be jealous. And then catch yourself with those small little baby wins, because those little baby wins put you on the path to success. So I think that is awesome. Really appreciate what you did today. Do we have anything else we need to cover, Kelly, for today?
Yes, I have some closing remarks, but I want to thank Justin so much for being here with us, as well as the individuals in the audience. Thank you for your time and your engagement. And so while you all know that this class is open access, we will be transitioning to member only coming soon, and Turnkey ZRG will be having its first member only workshop on the dockets quickly approaching. So be on the lookout for details within your inbox. If you are not connected with the Pro Sports Assembly, please do so. We have us at Twitter at The Pro Assembly, Instagram at Pro Sports Assembly, LinkedIn at Pro Sports Assembly. For those of you that are members, please find our private group chat available. And for those of you who are not members, please simply become. And then one thing I want to say before I let us go here is we have an upcoming event happening on April 1st. This is not a April Fool's Day event, but is one that is super important. And it's featuring about from the C-suite. And we're going to be talking about innovative for inclusion. So register at prosportsassembly.com. Again, thank you so much for being here, Justin. Thank you so much, Lynn, for inviting Justin. And thank you all for being here with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Have a great rest of your day and an even better rest of your week.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody. Bye-bye.